Greetings, everyone. My name is Shepard Smith, Head of Marketing here at Gravitate, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. The topic of today's conversation is informing 2020 decisions with Agile analytics for associations. And while we have quite a bit to discuss, we welcome questions and invite you to submit them at any time using the written chat function along the right-hand side of your screen. Everyone in the audience is muted, and we'll be sending all of you a link to a recording of this webinar afterwards. Our first presenter today is Tim Ward, and it's fun to introduce Tim because there's quite literally no one on earth who knows more about association software, systems, and data than Tim. He was the original product architect of NetForum, the first fully web-based AMS that all other AMS systems are modeled on today. Then seeing the explosion of member data coming in and knowing what AMS systems could and could not do, he designed Nucleus, the first data analytics solution for associations, to provide exactly the data analytics that associations needed. Tim, I will now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you. My name is Tim Ward, and I am the CEO of Gravitate Solutions. Our presentation today is about fast data through Agile analytics. Some of you may or may not have heard about fast data, but we'll get into that. We're going to define these terms in a minute. And there's been a lot of, this is one of those buzzword things where there's been a lot of stuff written on social media or talk about it or what is it, so we're going to try to, we always like to have actual case studies with actual people, so we've got two case studies to go through with you, and thanks to our presenters for participating. One of them is COVID-19 related, but we're going to try to focus more on the the business proposition as opposed to actually COVID. And really the takeaway as we go through this is using data to inform decision-making at the executive level in a timely fashion. And here are our speakers today. So we have Lacey, Director of Information Technology from AAJ. We have Danielle Dean, who's the Membership Manager from AIAA. David Bender is a Senior Project Manager here at Gravitate. He also leads our Agile Analytics and data governance practice. And I'm Tim Ward, and I wish I was the third guitar player in the Rolling Stones, but I'm actually the CEO of Gravitate Solutions. So thank you. Our agenda today, I'm going to do a really quick demo. We back in March, when things started shutting down and our clients started calling us asking about what to do with their conference, should they cancel it, should they postpone it? We built a dashboard using data from 5 or 6 different public sources of all about COVID-19, including some association-specific data. So I'm going to do a really quick demo of that just to sort of provide context for our first case study, which is AIAA using that data to learn more insights about their membership globally. And then we're going to have a second case study that is not at all about COVID, but it's sort of similar, how to leverage data as an asset to make good decisions. Before we start, I just thought, these remote times where we're all sequestered at home, I think a little levity is always is a good thing. And so maybe most of you have seen this cartoon, but I think it's pretty awesome. It's an organization sitting around their boardroom and, we don't have to worry about digital transformation. Meanwhile, here comes the wrecking ball ready to rock their world. And the point is that, digital transformation is not a project that you do. It's something that happens. Disruption happens. Organizations need to adapt, but also plan ahead. Obviously, nobody could predict that we were going to get a pandemic. But forward-looking organizations, with a digital mindset, were better prepared. Telework, virtual conferencing, distance learning, Zoom, those things were here with us. They were here before the pandemic. And so organizations that had invested in those technologies and processes were obviously better prepared to cope with the drastic impact of the pandemic. And then, in the context of fast data and analytics, organizations that have already invested in a data strategy, and sort of adopted a data analytics mindset into their daily operations, are going to be better prepared to sort of make good decisions quickly as things happen quickly, which they have been lately. And finally, these new things, remote work, virtual conferencing, they're not going to go away after the pandemic ends. They're probably going to stay with us and become more widely adopted. And just for our own, at Gravitate, we're already talking about why do we need to have 2 physical office locations in 2 different cities. We have our entire staff now working from home. We've always had that capability, and now everybody's doing it. We have our IT manager goes to the office once in a while to reboot something or help one of our devs remote into their box. But other than that, we've all been at home, and so we're like, why do we need to pay for all that real estate and physical locations when we're not really using it? So, anyways, the genie's not going to go back into the bottle. All right. So, what is fast data? So, I'm sure everybody's heard the term big data. And there's been a lot of debate in the association space about, do associations have big data? And there's volume, variety, and velocity. Those are the 3 V's of big data. And so associations maybe don't have a lot of volume. They do have some variety, and that includes structured data that might be in the AMS, in SQL or whatever. But they have some unstructured data, so data that's generated in your community platform or through discussions on your website. If you have that's an example of unstructured data. So all of these data sources, that comprise the full volume of all the data that represents all your member engagement, is spread in all these different systems. Really, probably 20% or less is in your AMS. And so, the goal here is you want to be able to gather that data and put it into, have it be in a format that's useful, so that if you really need it or if you want to gain insights out of it, you can do that. And then maybe more importantly right now, the time-sensitive factor. Like, you have to make decisions quickly, right? The conference is coming up, and you have to decide: are we going to postpone it, or are we going to cancel it, or are we going to make it virtual? What are we going to do? And so, really, to have data as an asset and be able to use it as you have those conversations and as you make those decisions, gives you an edge over organizations that maybe aren't as evolved. Okay, so I'm going to do a really quick demo here, and I've chosen to do a live demo, which was probably not a good choice, but we're going to flip over away from PowerPoint and into Google Chrome. And when back in March, when this pandemic first hit, I think it really became real for us, maybe a lot of people, the day after the NBA shut down. That was sort of like, oh my God, this is here, it's real, this is going to affect us. And so we were getting calls from our association clients almost right away that next day about, should we cancel our conference? And not also, like, what is everybody else doing? What are your other clients doing with their conference? That was a really big one. And we obviously we want to know what the impact's going to be on our business. We knew that conferences are a big revenue source, and so we're trying to plan what's that going to mean for us. How can we help? What can we do to sort of contribute to figuring all this stuff out that's disrupting us in real time? And so, we have a data platform called Nucleus, which is designed from the ground up to sort of support fast data solving of those kind of use cases. And so, around the same time that we were trying to figure all this stuff out, there were data feeds coming out that were public, and I said, all right, we have a platform that can ingest this and make sense of it. So let's do that. So we spent about a week building out the site. The data sources we're using are a hodgepodge. It's covidtracking.com, which is basically aggregating data from like CDC and World Health Organization and their sources. But they also have a team of volunteers who are interacting with state and local officials, healthcare officials, at the local and state level to sort of get. So I felt at the time that it was a little more timely, perhaps, than the CDC data, which is somewhat delayed. And so it's a volunteer organization. It's loosely sponsored by the Atlantic. If you go to our website, we have a COVID page. You can kind of drill in and see about where all these sources come from. But it's volunteer-run community data, public data. New York Times published a similar feed that had county-level data, which we think is really useful. The most popular probably piece of the site is this association event calendar cancellations, which was provided by a group called Breakthrough Healthcare, who were kind enough to share their data with us to allow us to pull it into the site. And then we have some other things. We've got some world data from the European CDC, and we have some global airport travel advisory conditions data. That's just sort of different things we can look at. And I'm just going to do a real quick. This is mainly context for the next case study, but I thought people might be interested. And so here's the site, and there's a couple what we call data cards here. And so the first one are these growth rate trends. So this is a really important chart. And so what we have here is this yellow line is the growth rate of infections in the U.S. And so, part of the Opening Up America Again gating criteria is you need to have 14 days of decreased, infection rate. And so this black flat line here is sort of zero. It's zero. So you see here we've got 14 days, and we've got a yellow line, which is the infection rate growth, which has been negative for 14 days. So that's good. So the U.S. as a whole meets the gating criteria. By the way, those federal guidelines, if anybody is interested, are at whitehouse.gov/openingAmerica. And they have advice for individuals, advice for businesses, and some of them are a little vague, but this is where the information is. Okay, the second chart is showing testing trends. So the green line here is growth rate of testing. And so we're seeing in the United States, again, the blue line is total tests and the yellow line is positive tests. So we're doing more testing, we're growing the testing we're doing, and that the rate of infection is growing at a smaller rate as we do more testing, which is what's expected. And of course, that's why this yellow line is below zero on this other chart. So those are sort of positives. The association meetings impacted. This is the breakthrough healthcare data. This is by far the most popular and most, this was the thing people were asking us for when we built this. And it's fascinating to see. So it's basically, I think I'm just going to drill in and look at the data. Maybe some organizations on the call are in here, because if we've got the organization is one of the filters, we can look for people who are here. But basically, it's the status of events going back to March, started in March. So if we look at March, you had 16, and it's the metric is attendees. So conferences, there were 69,000 people who went to virtual. And this is, by the way, this is not every meeting in the association space, so it's kind of focused on medical societies and healthcare. But it's interesting nonetheless. So March there were 69,000 virtual conference attendees. 49 people couldn't go because their event was canceled. There was one event that was held, I think in March, but I think that was the only one for the whole first 6 months of the year. You sort of see as we go along, like April, a lot of cancellations of virtual. But as we look forward, we see things are kind of starting in July or August. We see that things hopefully maybe starting up again. And I know that there's a lot of factors involved with that, so it's going to be really interesting to watch, right? What happens? Let's hope that things do keep improving, so that we can start having safely some of the conference experiences that we've become used to. The other really interesting thing here is virtual. So when we started doing this, I'm going to go back to the pie chart. When we started doing this, I think the virtual percentage was like 7 or 8%, and as it's gone on, it's creeping up. So, and I expect that in the, moving forward, even past the pandemic, that virtual conferences are going to be a bigger piece of this pie. And one more thing. This is sort of an example of analysis of unstructured data. So one of the data feeds that we brought in was it's basically airports, international travel reports from airports all over the world. And so we have a algorithm to sort of do text processing and then sentiment analysis of what's in those reports. And you can see that it's pretty obvious that there's not a lot of international travel going on right now, based on the topics that sort of are red. Red sort of means negative, green is positive. Definitely looking forward to the day when the green terms get bigger and the red ones get smaller, and things like COVID go away. But for now, this is a really effective way of saying that international travel is heavily affected by this pandemic. This county chart is interesting because it does infection growth rate with a 3-day moving average of counties that have at least 100 cases. So once a county has 100 more cases, it goes into this pool. And we can see this changes almost every day, and so there's a story behind every one of these. Like Cass, Indiana has an outbreak, and that's one of the Tyson meat processing plants. And this is sort of an early warning insight into like where outbreaks are happening when they're early on. So that's sort of the COVID site. We're going to hold off on questions till the end, so I'm going to go away from this and back to our PowerPoint. And let's see. And I'm going to go to our next our first case study, which is David Bender and AIAA, and they're going to talk about how they use some of this data to get insights about their membership. David, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon. I'm David Bender. I'm a senior project manager with Gravitate, and I'm happy to take you next through how we use this COVID data that you just saw in conjunction with member data from AIAA to learn some things. Next, please. Quick note about our methodology. Our data sources were the COVID dashboard data lake and the AIAA membership data from their nucleus data lake. We blended those two data sources in order to create visualizations in Power BI. We met in two 1-hour Agile sessions with the AIAA team to review these. And then following those sessions, we packaged up those visualizations. Those have been delivered to AIAA for continued use and exploration. And the packages are actually connected via API to both the COVID and the AIAA data sources so that they can be refreshed and modified and used to get data in real time or near real time about the outbreak and about the membership. Next. So with that, I'd like to throw it to Danielle to talk about what she and her team learned from this exploration.
All right, thank you, David. I am Danielle Dean. I'm membership manager at AIAA. If you want to go to the next slide, we have over 30,000 members, and our overall vision is to shape the future of aerospace. Our main project goals, we wanted to determine the impact of COVID-19 on our overall membership. And we are a global organization, so we have international effect too. So that was something that we definitely looked into during this process. And we also really wanted to see, are we going to need to extend membership for certain people that are in the highest impacted areas? Like, we didn't know how we could compare it in a very efficient way. So when we were working with David and that team a couple months earlier, working on just a couple other projects with Agile, we were presented with this as an option to look through, and I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's see what we can do, see what we can get together. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm sure David can go into a little bit more detail, but we wanted to look and see the projected positive among our AIAA members. So it's all types of members as well as our student members. And as you can see, obviously California is very impacted. We do have about 4,822 members that reside in that state, but about 2 of them are gonna, have a positive or be affected by COVID. So that was reassuring to us. But if you look at New York, it's 6, and then New Jersey's 2. So it was refreshing and also like an eyebrow raise. Like, okay, so we need to think about what we're going to do with our membership going forward. So David, if you have any other insights on this.
Yeah, I do. We are able to, these are averages based on the per capita infection rate and the count of members in those localities. Also, depending on in the carousel, we now have county level data, so we could actually now at this point, if we have county for the individual, take that deeper. And then on the right filter, you'll note that we are filtering by member type. There are actually, many dimensions by which we can filter this data based on the things that we know about AIAA membership and the filters that we have in the data in the lake. So if we wanted to know by years of membership or by years in the field or age or any of the other demographics, and there are different use cases, of course, for knowing any of these, then we could explore that as well. This is just one of one of the pieces.
Yeah, and at some point during our discovery, we definitely did drill down further into the data to see. So, okay, next slide. All right, so it's just the forecasting data. So this is what we actually found very, very interesting because it's prediction. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is it going to come back? So we really wanted to see, based on the algorithm, how many projected members are going to get a positive test, and how many students might get a positive test. And then also the latter, like, are they going to, like, is it going to decrease? So I felt that the data was very important, and it was amazing to see the team go through and be able to put them all together, because I remember you were like, I haven't done this before. Like we were tweaking things and going through, and it was a very great experience doing this forecasting. And you know, I'm anxious to see what June might look like now that we're in May already. So, and if David, again, if you want to chime in with anything.
Yeah, happy to. So these projections by date reported can be really helpful in knowing where things are likely to go. But we're finding out new information about the outbreak every day. And so, reporting is inconsistent, testing is inconsistent. So we're learning more and having updated information every day about where trends are going. And the nice thing about having this tool is that the data is updated as we learn it. So if we were to go back and run these charts today, and this was, April, sometime in April.
Early April.
Right, we would get different. The line would look different, and of course that's what Danielle is able to do in her team by having these packages at her fingertips. You can just go back and hit refresh and get a up-to-date, revised projection based on what we've learned since that session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if say we went back in and we refreshed it, and May looks like the forecast for positives was going to increase. The upper bound was going to be increased by 20 or 30 people. Then we might discover, an action plan to see if we do need to extend membership, or do we need to help out our members in that any type of compensation or a discount. And then not only that, but what else can we do to give them value and resources that they can't use, like they can't go to a conference or anything like that right now. So we, switched our minds, and as Tim was talking about in the beginning, we decided to do a virtual conference for the one that's coming up in June. So a lot of this played into a lot of decision making for us. Okay, next slide.
And just one comment for any of you tech folks who are taking notes: the data feeds are automated, so the data in the data lake is updating in near real time. The refresh that Danielle and David are talking about is a limitation of the Power BI tool that they were using to create the charts.
Thanks, Tim. That's correct.
So not only were we looking at the positive cases or presumptive positive, we also wanted to see the forecasting for hospitalization and obviously deaths, unfortunately, because we don't know if, we might be impacted that way. And I don't know how it's very morbid to talk about this, but we also could have members that have, family members that are being affected, but they're not. So a lot of this was also determining what we should be doing next, and again, refreshing and seeing the forecast either jump up or jump down and being able to act appropriately. Okay, next slide. So, summary findings and outcomes. Again, we think that our membership won't be too heavily affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, we don't know if a lot of the people that are part of our membership have family members that are affected, so obviously we can't predict that. And although that our industry, the commercial and manufacturing industry for aerospace, they're struggling a little bit, but a lot of our corporate members and people and the engineers are working from home. So we don't see too much of an action going forward with membership yet. But if key indicators start to, fall, people decide they're not joining, they're not renewing, they're having financial problems, they email us about it, then we're going to consider going forward with any type of extension programs, and if there's any substantial layoffs or furloughs, with our professional members, we're gonna work on that too. But that's pretty much it. I thoroughly enjoyed working with David and his team. This was an incredible experience, and it was an amazing way to see something that is happening right now and has huge impact on associations and just globally all organizations. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
All right.
Okay.
Back to me.
Back to you, David.
Thank you. So Danielle talked about working with us through the Agile Analytics. So I thought I would just take a quick break from real life and tell you about really what that means. Agile Analytics is an offering that we have developed from Gravitate Solutions. And next slide, please. It's an exploration of association data, and it is exploratory. It's characterized because it's exploratory rather than operational. So, an operational report or a tool is something that is used regularly on an ongoing basis. If you have a membership report that you run weekly or monthly or daily to know how many members you have, or a query that tells us how many registrants we have for the upcoming virtual meeting. Those are operational tools that we use again and again to get information from our data. Exploratory means that we are really, the focus is entirely different. We are we're looking at the data in a way to quickly find out and discover value in the data set. We want to operate quickly so that we are maintaining focus and engagement, and it's really experimentation, playing with the data, if you want to call it that, and identifying value. The work is iterative, and it's incremental, so we are learning as we go. The questions that we answer this week will lead to more questions that we will explore in the coming week. So we are, trying things, discarding what doesn't work, not putting a lot of infrastructure into it so that we can rapidly move on. Our user stories are always value-driven. So we're looking for ways that we can return value to the business with the information that we find out. We're not, sometimes that means we want to confirm or disprove assumptions. Sometimes it means that we want to look for relationships between data, or we want to identify patterns. We may come up with 10 hypotheses for patterns that we think are there in the data, and we may find only 5 of them. And so what we've done is return value by immediately eliminating five false opportunities and allowing us to double down and focus our resources on what the data says will work. Agile Analytics is adaptive to rapid feedback. So the information that we get, we take back to the client can take it, the team can take it back to the association and say, this is what we've learned. And they may get questions from the C-suite. This is what about this, that, and this, and we can adapt and move on that very quickly. The deliverables are a written weekly analysis summary with screenshots and conclusions that we've drawn. And then, as we did with AIAA, we package up visualizations and deliver them so that the so the association can continue to use those in Power BI, connected directly to the data set to evolve their learning. So we've been doing this for quite a while with AIAA and also with AAJ. Next slide. So I want to introduce someone you know very well, Lacey Packard, who is going to talk with us about how AAJ has used Agile analytics to learn more about their members and their data.
Thank you, David. We can go to the next slide. So AAJ has tens of thousands of members across 12 different member types. So we have a lot of data about our members and a lot of members to manage. Our mission is to promote a fair and effective justice system. We're currently fighting that fight really hard to make sure everybody gets the protection that they need during this pandemic. We want to make sure that's something we fight for. So then our project goals, we've been working with Agile analytics, gosh, it's been 2 years, David. So we started with our membership data and went through, and we ourselves, like David did an amazing job of leading us through that, but we were kind of all over the place trying to find the best rhythm that worked for us. And so what we started to do was set project goals. I find that that's extremely helpful because then you know where you're going. So what we wanted to do for other departments, besides what we did for membership, was to set baseline data for benchmarking in the future. This is really important to us as we go to launch a new website to see kind of what our old website sales were doing versus what the new website's going to do. Reviewing specific program and product sales data. There's a case study in here where we're going to take a look at that in a second. We thought that was important because we've had a lot of new programs introduced in our association in the last 5 years, and we need to know which ones are working and which ones aren't. And then the last thing is the challenging assumptions for more revenue. I know that a lot of organizations have programs or projects, things that they always have done, and maybe in your gut, or maybe you know because of the data, that they're not performing well, and it's maybe something your association should look at changing. But you're not able to do that because you can't get the data easily or quickly to be able to respond to things. So through the next 3 case studies, I'm going to go through and talk about the ways that we accomplish those goals and some other insights that we found along the way. So first, we can go ahead and start on the next slide, talking about our baseline data and our benchmarks. So what we did here is we were reviewing a specific member type that over the years has gone up and down between 18 and about 20,000 members. And when we pulled in our census data, so for us, we have a specific member group that has representation on our board, and we have to and we need to know their member counts in each region and in each state to know how they're represented. Think of it kind of like Congress, the House of Representatives, and that's how we do our board. So one thing that we were reviewing here is going up and down and seeing what the different regions we're doing each year from 2015 to 2020. And while we were looking at the census data, it was actually, and the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to create more benchmarks for the future to see how different areas were growing and how maybe they were shrinking and what that was based on. And so we put a hypothesis out there that was, well, we think certain regions, like you can see over the years, that the Northeast region goes up and stays steady around 3,800, so like a 300 increase in membership. That's a board seat per specific state. And we saw similar increases in other areas as well, as you can see from the census by year and region chart below that. What hypothesis we put out there was we thought it was our regional manager program. What our regional manager program is, we have hired over the last few years specific people to work in these areas and get membership for us. We hired a new regional rep in 2016 for the Northeast area, and we can see from that increase in her engagement in the area how her membership numbers jumped. Because they had always been around this 3,500 area, and now they're up to 3,800. I think I was saying that as well with our, I think it was, with our Southeast region as well. We had someone who was our regional manager there for a few years, but then we got a new one. So we're now benchmarking these and looking for growth in these areas each year. And we can start to hypothesize, if we put a regional manager in a specific area, this is how much we believe we can increase membership. Like, what percentage could we increase it? And that was really significant. There's been more conversations that people thought these programs were working. The members in those states were more engaged, but no one had actually done any data around it, even though this is a pretty quick pull. And so we were able to quickly make that in one Agile Analytics session, and it was very exciting. Our whole team was like, "Do you see that?" And that's one thing I really enjoy about analytics, or the Agile Analytics approach, is the way that we've structured it at AAJ is we've developed a data analytics working group, and yes, we call ourselves the dogs, because that's what the acronym is. And we have this little working group, and we are actually going to departments now and working with them to set these baseline data and benchmarks. And we just finished putting together a real solid process outline and strategy on how we want to move forward working with this Agile setup. I need to send that to David, actually. So from this slide, what we really took away from this is that when we put those regional managers out in the field into those different areas, we do increase our membership. One thing I'd like to look at in the future is what's the cost benefit. Our members also range from dues amount based on years of practice. So I'd like to do some deeper dive in the future to figure out what kind of members we were getting in those areas. But that's our small case study on our membership trends by region. And so when we talk about reviewing program data, and we can move to the next slide, that was where we started to do that, was kind of in that census. The next group that we've been working with is who we call our exchange department, but they're really, they do research and put it together for our members to be able to buy from us. And the slides that you're looking at here, the data that we pulled is the number of invoices that this product was sold on in the 2018, 2019, and 2020 years. And there had been a gut feeling and obviousness of the budget being down, that the sales have been down, but they didn't really know quite how much. And we were trying to figure out, is it content, is it users? So we went in some really different directions in reviewing this data. And so what you see here in front of you is what we finally got to a point where we were discussing how we could increase sales. And this is where really I think Agile Analytics shines through, because this wasn't a part of our original data scope. And like I said, we kept asking and I'll get to it later, but the weird questions. And we discussed if we could see what we purchased together. And what David and his team were able to do was to take all those invoices and start to pull out what products were purchased with the other. And so we could see groupings. So David, if you want to click to the next slide. So that what we can see here is our traumatic brain injury packet, for example. It was sold 73 times with another product. And over on the right-hand side are the products that it was sold with. And so we can start to look and see, by the different titles of these products, what goes together and what additional offerings that we may be able to offer to our members that they might bundle up and buy together. Because what we found, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is that half of our members were buying more than one of these products at a time. So if we could go ahead and bundle them together with something that made sense, then we could increase our sales. And that was something we've never talked of. We don't do that now. We don't bundle these products together. So that really opened up not really a new channel for revenue, but a new strategy behind getting some new revenue on this. And it kind of broke us out of focusing on the content and users. We're still focusing on that. We're still discussing the different ways that works, but what we got to pull out of this was something immediately actionable that we could put into play and move forward. And that, again, I think that's what's very powerful about Agile. And as I talking about it's going to create more revenue. And that's what I want to talk about in our next slide, which is challenging assumptions for more revenue. Oh, sorry. I skipped too far. We went too deeper here with taking our depositions and we did another analysis. I'm sorry, David. I forgot that was the next one.
Go to the next one?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to note on this for a second. So we had actually just launched this product last fall when we were doing this original analysis. And I looked at the data this morning, and we originally sold this product when we pulled the data, I think it was in November, December. It had only been sold with 2 other products. And over the last few months, it's increased. Now, we're not seeing any double up on that, but it's starting to give us more insight into what other people would want to purchase with us. So, anyways, we can go to the next one now. Okay, so I love this chart. As you're going through and discussing our membership and our product purchases, we decided to focus on membership tenure. And one thing that we've also brought out of this data analytics is some data definitions, like tenure versus other phrases that we were using, and making sure we were all on the same page. And we were talking about member tenure, we're talking about how long they've been a member with us. Because we also use years in practice a lot, and that's how long they've been an attorney. They've been practicing as an attorney. So we worked on a lot of terminology. I would say if you don't have a data dictionary, just start working on it. Put pen to paper and start moving on it. It's tedious, but you'll really appreciate it when you go back to it. So some more about this chart. We had a very large assumption in our association that first-year members did not buy this product. Instead, it was our members that had been with us longer who understand what it is and who understand what we're trying to give them. And for the very high top end where you see that dark green, that was true. Members that have been with us for a really long time, they're the majority of people who buy. But what surprised us was the dark blue area at the bottom. Those are people in their first year of membership. Like, we did not expect that in the first year people were doing so. And so we weren't marketing to them. And we weren't really marketing to the mid people. We've really been focusing on this upper high end. So now we have a new channel for revenue here in the middle with your pinks and your purples, that we can focus on where those people are with their membership tenure with us, possibly see what they're looking for in that area. Also look at their bar date, see where they're at with their practice, and what resources that we can come back and give them there. So this was what, we've also found some other things along the way. This is the one I could think of most recent that challenged assumptions. We had found something last year with a specific event that 20% of the people who attended the event never got a piece of marketing from us. I'm sorry, 20% of the first-time attendees had never got a piece of marketing from us. And we were like, where did these people come from to even register? And that was a big challenge because they had sent so many emails, so much marketing, that there was this strongly held belief that the only way people come to our events is if we beat them up with emails every day. And so we were able to show that that's not actually true. So I really, where you can challenge those assumptions, do so. It's also a lot of fun. I think it is anyways, to challenge and go back before and be like, look what we found and here's where we can go and what we can do. Part of that data analytics working group I was talking about, beyond assessing the data and setting benchmarks for people, what we're going to do is we're also providing them with solutions, not just a review of the data and benchmarking here's where you are, but we're helping them to move forward by telling them you need to change your communication in this way. And so we work with marketing, we pull them in and talk about different areas. You need to track your data this way so we can do more in-depth analysis. So IT will give some suggestions. And so we're trying to really come at this from a strategic angle and have this as something that our association uses to make business decisions in the future. And it's like a lot of things are culminating right now because we got pushed into this telework situation. Everybody has been a little bit more engaged at my company with what our members are doing online and what they're doing virtually. So we got a question from one of my chiefs last week that can we see what people are buying during these last few months when we've all been in quarantine? And so we pinged David and his team, and that's something that we're going to be exploring in the future is how our customers' buying patterns have changed. So in summary, and I was really trying to look at this from a high level and what I thought people would get out of this presentation if they're thinking about engaging in Agile analytics and how they can help them, is to set goals and benchmark. You're going to need to prove that that data is evolving and changing, and that's how you're going to know how to grow your association. And that is the best way that I've been able to get my C-levels engaged. Because when we set a benchmark and then we measure it, like we found last year that over 2 years we had a 15% shift from people paying by check to people paying online. And I'm building a new website. So how important is that for us to know at the moment and to be able to take that data to my C-levels and say, hey, this is important that we need to pay attention to this trend, they start to believe and trust the data more. Challenging those assumptions, we found a new revenue channel when we stepped back and let the data lead. Sometimes, as David said, sometimes you don't always find exactly what you're looking for, and sometimes the question doesn't get you anywhere further. But a lot of times what we found is asking the question may even lead to a better question and a better understanding of what you were looking for. And then finally, I'd say ask the weird question. Like, the most bizarre thing you could think of how your data is interacting. I've seen David and his team pull together some really cool things. So I would say always keep asking the question. Always question. I think that's a USO thing. Anyways, so I would also encourage, if anybody has any questions about how we've done more with Agile Analytics, please feel free to reach out to me if there are any other questions. There was one last thing I was going to know. This is what I forgot. The reason that we have started to do the product sales exploration, we had one of our team members, our AAJ team members, Amber, put together some data of what our members have been attending as far as webinars and things in the last 2 months as well. And what we found was that our female members engage differently with our education than our male members do online. And so we're currently trying to figure out how to build out that space and how that would change going forward. But for the amount of space women take up in our organization, they were outpacing men on the webinars. They still weren't the majority of attendees, but for how much of the association they make up, they're really killing it. So we want to see how we can meet them in that space and give them more benefit there. So I think that's really all I had for today. David, was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Lacey, I think that was great. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lacey. Okay, so we're wrapping up here with some final thoughts. The first bullet is about tools, and today the tools we have, the technology tools we have at our disposal are not holding us back. I've been in this association tech space for a long time, and I remember early on when that was not the case, where we were wanting to do more, but we were kind of constrained by, we didn't have quite the tech tools we need. That's no longer the case. Agile is a proven methodology, and it's designed to, kind of move quickly and find insights quickly, and then iterate and move on if something doesn't work. So that's, uses some principles from the Agile methodology and applies it to data analytics. And then the last two bullets about blending and using external data goes to the comment I made earlier where, traditionally you would think as an association we have an AMS and that's where our member data is, but really the data is in all the different systems that you have and all the different web properties and the online community and your email marketing automation platform, and also external or public data sources that may be germane to your industry. We saw some examples of that today with healthcare data. And so, having the foresight and the planning piece, having an investment mindset, a data analytics mindset that we're gonna make this an important part of our operations is sort of the prerequisite. It's, not the technology, but actually the people and process part. And so that's sort of the end for today. And thank you everybody. And we're gonna, I guess we have time to take a few questions maybe.
And I have a few questions. What do you recommend for non-technical users that are used to using spreadsheets? how do you make the adoption process successful?
Well, Excel is a fine tool. Like if you can do pivot tables in Excel, you can do some of this analytic stuff. And if you don't know how to do pivot tables in Excel, and you're interested in analytics, and that's a skill that you should add to your portfolio. And David said we use Power BI for the Agile analytics because it's a free tool that people don't have to buy, and so our team likes it. Yeah, I mean, the getting started doesn't require all the infrastructure that we kind of showed today, but all of that infrastructure was really helpful to us as an organization trying to sort of help share some of this data out to the community. What was the second part of the question?
Yeah, and so they were saying, the question was how to make the adoption process successful, basically.
There's some culture, there's getting buy-in, getting people to, how are you helping me do my job with this? I think Lacey touched on the consolidation of terms and making sure everybody has common definitions, like what's the difference between tenure and years as an attorney in this case. Usability, so like make sure that what you're delivering is easy to use and people can understand it. I guess that goes back to the terms, but also it's easy to overwhelm. So if you're doing anything with visualizations and charts, the person consuming it should be able to, within 2 or 3 seconds, know what that chart is trying to say.
I might add too that there's lots of resources for training available online, basically, especially with tools like Power BI.
And Matt, I guess I'd also add the part about before you don't just dive into this. Like there is a lot of planning and getting maybe cat herding might be a way to describe it. Like what data do you have? Is there data that you need that you don't have? How do you get it? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? What is the strategy behind? What do you as an organization? What are you trying to accomplish? And then, as you list goals under that, how do you measure them, and how do you know that you're being successful? So there's a whole that component. I think Lacey talked about that a little bit, but I think any organization that's kind of doing this type of thing, that's if you start without that, you always end up going back and having to do it, right? And so you can just dive right in, but you're going to realize that I really want to do analytics about my membership, but I have all these other things I have to do first to make sure that we get everybody on the same page so that we can be successful.
Yeah, one of the things we found is that different terms mean different things to different people. So getting it all, getting a standard definition is important.
Yeah, that was good advice from Lacey and David and his team. That's a common thing that we do, just, help you compile. You know how it is, like 6 different people do a query out of the AMS to find how many members there are, and you get 6 different answers because the queries have different parameters or different definitions.
Exactly.
So that's a really important thing. And that's probably a good starting point is sort of the tech part is later, right? There's the people process stuff kind of has to go first in order to, and then you sort of build off of that.
And I guess, and this is the last question I think is actually a pretty good ending question, is asking that they said that the COVID-19 data was really interesting, and to see in the tool. And is it available to see on Gravitate's website regularly?
It is. It's there all the time. It updates daily. The different feeds kind of update at different times. So like the county data drops at noon, and then the state level data drops at 5, and then sort of the ECDC. I didn't even show you. We have a whole Italy dashboard. They have really good data that has data about recoveries and home isolation, and so that comes a little earlier in the day. But so if you go to nucleusanalytics.com. And then there's a resources section there, and then COVID is one of the choices, and it's a free resource for the association community. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're coming to the end of our time, and so should wrap up. Many thanks to Tim, David, and especially our guest speakers, Danielle Dean and Lacey Packard. As Tim said, our COVID resources can be found on the Nucleus Analytics website. And to continue the conversation and discuss data analytics at your organization, please message analytics@gravitatesolutions.com. We will now end the webinar. Everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day.